going to talk for a second about one of my favorite topics, which is central nervous system regulation! Exclamation points. Here's the thing. Central nervous system regulation is a bit of a dull topic, except that it's absolutely foundational when it comes to both your individual mental health and resilience and your relationship health and resilience. So I'm going to give you a really fast overview. If you're doing any of my training programs, this is at the base of all of it. But I wanted to give you just a couple minute overview so you understand what I'm talking about. So first of all, my name is Shannon. If this is your first interaction with me, I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, a certified coach. I grew up in a first responder family, and my practice is entirely built on helping people who work as first responders, healthcare, death care, social services. And here's why that matters to regulation. If your job is to step into the nitty gritty, gnarly stuff that happens in your community, our goal is not that you are in a good mood and happy clappy all the time. That's just not reasonable or fair. If you go run a horrific scene, you're not just going to tootle your way back to the station whistling. No. So I'm never going to want you to be aiming for that goal. What I do want us to understand is what it feels like when our system is regulated versus dysregulated, and then what we need to regulate it when we are wobbly. Okay. The other thing is working in those roles means that your system probably regulates differently. So I'm going to talk about that in a second. But first, let me just give you a basic overview of how our central nervous systems work. Okay, so here's the basics. I want you to think of yourself as a machine, right? Your central nervous system is a piece of machinery that is based on the vagus nerve. We're not going to go too far into those details, okay? But I just want you to start thinking through that lens. And then I'm going to teach you a really basic way to think about it. So I did not come up with this. This is from someone named Dr. Dan Siegel. Never want to steal other people's stuff. This is his model for understanding our brains, and he calls it the flipped lid. So what I want you to do is I want you to think about this as your brain, obviously super simplified, right? Over the top, we have our prefrontal cortex. And our prefrontal cortex is what gives us our executive function. So executive function, I call it our spreadsheet brain, right? This is where we are logical, we are calm, we can communicate clearly, we can make good decisions, right? Prefrontal cortex is really important for things like, I don't know, having a good conversation with your spouse, okay? If something happens and our system goes into fight or flight, then our prefrontal cortex gets out of the way, right? Think of it as this is where you flip your lid, and we are run by the amygdala. Okay, the amygdala is the part of our brain that is designed to help us in danger. Lid flipping is appropriate. This is an appropriate way for our brain to operate. So if a bear runs into my office, I want my spreadsheet brain to get out of the way, and I want my amygdala in charge. Okay. What tends to happen though is this system gets wonky, to put it clinically. We start operating with a flipped lid in moments where a flipped lid is not helpful. Okay, so that is the basic way that a system works. And what I want you to think about is if you work in a first responder or other helping role, you are actually probably the most regulated when shit is literally on fire. When things are going crazy and there's lights and smoke and yelling and all that stuff, there is a good chance that your system at that point sinks in. You are good to go. Okay, that is when your brain is operating the best, which is fantastic for work, and we're not going to change that. When I talk about regulation, I have no interest in undoing that process. Where I do have an interest in helping you, though, is then your lid gets flippy at moments it's not helpful. So if you're home and it's quiet and calm, or you're trying to have a conversation with your spouse, what tends to happen is our lid gets flippy. We get dysregulated at moments when it is not helpful. So when I talk about building a system to take care of your mental health, I'm not talking about being happy clappy. I'm also not talking about being chill. So regulated does not mean chill, right? We can be regulated and still very active. I am recording a training right now that has me both regulated and active. Okay, so don't worry. That's not the goal that we're going for. What we're going for is the ability to understand where our system is at, the position of our lid, and most importantly, understand what we need to do if that lid needs to come down. Okay?